Okay. So Buddhists believe that countless people have already attained Buddhahood in the past, that countless Buddhas exist right now in the 21st century, and that we will all become Buddhas in the future someday. So in order for us to think of the Buddhas as a true source of refuge, we need to make an effort, right? We need to make a conscious effort to exert ourselves, right? We need to exert ourselves to listen to the teachings, to practice the teachings, right? To meditate on the teachings. And by doing so, slowly, we can develop full confidence and faith in the Buddha's thoughts. So the point is that we have to be able to make this effort to meet the Buddhas, halfway, so to speak, right? It's not like the Buddhas can just, miraculously cause us to become fully enlightened. Not at all, right? We all know that's not the case. We have to be listening and studying and meditating in order that we can make this spiritual transformation possible. So even though, the Buddhas are all around us, we can't communicate with them directly, right? Especially, if we haven't made any effort at all to understand the words of the Buddha, and we haven't made any effort to train our minds through meditation, then there's no way. Even if the Buddha is right here on my left shoulder, I'm not going to be able to talk to the Buddha, right? And there are many stories, of the great, Mahasiddhis who, through purification, through many, many years of contemplation, et cetera, were able to have direct visions, direct communication, with the Buddhas. Even Lama Tsongkhapa, who is the revered, one of the top scholars in the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, right? He eventually was able to have these direct relationships with many of the Buddhas, right? But we're not there yet. So by making an effort, though, then we will eventually be able to enjoy such benefit from such relationships. So the Buddhas, or let's just start with, say, the Buddha has many special qualities that he's developed. And because he's completely free from self-cherishing, then one of the main qualities is that he's completely free from all fear. Right? If you're free of self-cherishing, then that cuts the ties, that cuts the origin of fear. And so because he himself is completely free of fear, then likewise, he's able to help us overcome our fears. Also, the Buddha has equal compassion for everybody, right? There's no sense of discrimination, complete equanimity in the sense of treating everybody, true equality, right? So they don't consider some beings close and others far. Doesn't discriminate against people because of age or race or gender, etc. Right? Everybody is equally respected and loved. So although we can't directly see the Buddhas now, going back to the previous point, we can rely on authentic spiritual teachers who embody the Buddha's teachings, right? So when we think of, the Dalai Lama or the Sakya Trizing, there's so many, Ling Rinpoche, so many beautiful, wonderful teachers that are still, with us right now, right? And we can think of them as role models, in addition to being authentic sources of the teachings. So we're very, very fortunate in being able to access the teachings now, right? Very fortunate, because in many parts of the world, the Buddha's teachings do not exist, so to speak, essentially don't exist. So So wonderful that we have this opportunity to study and practice. So the Buddha is said to have given 84,000 teachings to serve the wide variety of individuals' perspectives and capacities. And so in general, the teachings can be categorized into two. So the first is the Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle, also, which is now more correctly or accurately known as the Pali tradition, the Theravadan tradition. And then the second being the Mahayana, or the Great Vehicle School, which is now referred to as the Sanskrit tradition, right? So we've got the Pali tradition and then the Sanskrit tradition, or the Theravadan and the Mahayana schools of Buddhism. And so both traditions share in common four main concepts. And these are known as the four seals of Buddhism. Okay, so the four seals. Again, some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with these. So they're, different translations of the four seals. But anyway, all compounded things are impermanent. That's the first. All compounded things. Also, the order of presentation differs somewhat. So don't get confused. But anyway, the first is all compounded things are impermanent. The second is that all emotions are painful. The third is that all phenomena are empty. They're without inherent existence. And the fourth is that nirvana is beyond extremes. Okay, so we'll be examining all four of these ideas over the course of these 4 sessions. And today we'll focus primarily on the second one, which is that all emotions are painful, which essentially is that what we ordinarily think of as happiness is actually suffering in disguise. So the Buddha's teachings identify 3 main causes that result in misery or undesirable experiences, and they are ignorance, attachment, and anger. And so what's important to note is that, ignorance and attachment and anger don't exist outside somewhere, right? Where do they exist? Where do they come from, right? Right. Here, they come from within us, right? And so the Buddha shows us that we are responsible for our own thoughts and emotions, and indeed, our very experiences. So whether we have a good day or a bad day, all depends on our perception and our perspectives as to what's going on around us, right? It all comes down to our own perspective. But that's a good thing, right? When you really think about it, it's a good thing, because that means, we can change, right? The only thing we can change is ourselves, right? We can't change somebody else. That's almost impossible. It really is impossible. No matter how much good advice you give to somebody, they may or may not take it, right? Even if you think, oh, that's so obviously the way you should do something, for whatever reason, they may not take your great advice. But you can take your own great advice, right? Is that easy? No, it's not easy. But anyway, so in today's session, we're going to focus on changing, or at least maybe admitting 2 of our most powerful negative emotions, right? So attachment and anger, right? So 2 of the root causes of suffering. Okay, so the Buddha said, if you wish all happiness, right? If you want to have all happiness, then you have to renounce all attachment. If you renounce all attachment, you will achieve the supreme happiness. So that means that happiness is found within our own minds, right? And not out there somewhere, not out there online. Right? So Amazon sells over 12 million products. But we know that happiness isn't to be found on the Amazon website, right? We know that if true happiness were to be found external to us, then logically, then the more good stuff that we acquire, then the happier we should be. Right? And we know that that's not the case, right? We know that we can only drink so many fine glasses of wine or cups of beer until eventually we just pass out. Right? I can only eat so much ice cream. And after a while, it just peaks. And it's not yummy anymore. So an important point, though, is that we're blinded to the attachment, right? We're blinded by our attachment to the extent that, we can't even recognize it. So the qualities, the attractive qualities of an object are just inseparable from the object that we desire, right? It's like that baked in attractiveness, that baked in goodness. And we don't realize that comes, we don't always realize that comes just from our own perceptions. So the beauty, the preciousness, that seems to be part, like inherent or intrinsic to an object, actually just, is a projection of our own mind. Right? So whether it's, the aroma of a fine perfume, or, or maybe somebody gives you a compliment, right? Those experiences, the fact that, you think of it as positive is just within your own mind. The source is within your own mind. And so we know that that's true, right? So, maybe somebody comes in and is wearing a new perfume, and some people in the office like it. They're like, oh, that's a nice perfume. And then other people are like, trying to run away. Okay. So enjoyment, going back to that point, enjoyment or happiness is, it's simply attachment, in disguise. Right? It's a form of attachment. It can be a very subtle form of attachment or a very gross form of attachment. And so, when we think of our relationship to different to people, to different things, think what's the difference between an ordinary, garden weed, maybe even a little native plant in your backyard, versus, a treasured, very rare, exquisite, flower, hothouse flower, right? And whether the day is beautiful and makes us smile or not, again, it's very much a projection of our own minds. So the example that I always give is that, for my mother, when the weather is very beautiful, very fine, like today, she feels sad because it reminds her of my father, who passed away 2 years ago. And it reminds her of the walks that they used to go together, the walks in the park that they used to do together, when the weather was beautiful. So any experience, whether it's pleasurable or not, any experience then, is colored by our experiences, of the past, as well as, whatever is going on in the present. So what are some of the things that we're attached to, right? And so the Buddha called out, 8 things in particular. These are known as the 8 worldly dharmas. So it's actually 4 points, and then they're opposites. So 4 things that we like, and then when we don't get those, then that we're unhappy, right? So that brings it to 8. So why don't we just take a minute and think to yourself, what are some of the different kinds of things that we're very attached to? So we can do this more as a discussion. We now have tons of people online. So if you want to unmute yourself and speak out, you're welcome to do that. What are some of the things that we are?
Your own views.
Your own views, okay. Well, that's a good one. Right.
Praise.
What's that?
Praise.
Praise. Okay. Thank you, Karen. Praise.
Like reputation.
Yeah, like your reputation. Right. So you want people to think good things about you. Yep. Anything else?
Was boiled down to the 5: food, sleep, sex,
Those are all good.
fame. I can't remember the 5th one.
I hadn't thought of
Food,
it
sleep,
characters.
sex, fame, and money.
Oh, there you go, money.
And of course, those are all really broad. So money just means stuff, and fame just means attention. You know.
Praise, yeah. Reputation.
Yeah, because eventually just boiled down to everything's one of these 5 things.
That's a good way of summarizing it. Good. Okay. Maybe physical comfort. That's a good one too, right? Good health. You gotta have good health. All right. So when we're separated from those, then like so, if we're poor, or if we're being criticized, etc., if we're being ignored, if we're hungry, if we're overworked, thirsty, so all of those are different aspects of things that we wish for and things that we wish to separate from. All right, good. And so, why then is attachment to all of this stuff a cause of suffering, right? So when we think of all of the time, the energy, the emotional investment that we invest in protecting all of these types of happiness, if we think of the everything from the alarm systems to like the insurance policies, passwords. Also think of expectations. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, right? Expectations. The expectations that we place on ourselves, on our children, on our spouses, even our pets, right? I'm really into dog training, so I always talk about dog training. We want everything and everyone around us. We all want to, everything has to be perfect, right? Everything has to be perfect because everything has to meet our expectations. And when our expectations are not met, then what happens, right? You get really, depressed, disappointed, angry, frustrated. So likewise, we get angry, we get upset when somebody robs us, when somebody insults us. And so all of that, what happens? What's the result of all of that negativity? And the Buddha taught this idea of karma, right? And so we're creating all of this negative energy. This is like negative karma. It's an imprint on our very fine mental, most subtle mental continuum that continues. Whoops. Most subtle continuum. So all of the negative karma, those negative imprints, that negative energy, whatever you want to call it, right? That's what, stays with us. It continues from lifetime to lifetime. And all it does is, if you don't purify it, then it's just generating more and more suffering, right? So anger, anger then is a destructive emotion in the sense that, it leads us to harm ourselves and it leads us to harm others so that we end up, suffering both in this life and potentially, in future lives. Anger makes us, look really ugly, right? Because your face, might change colors and your body becomes very tense, right? If you're a dog, you might growl. People avoid us, right? You're sending out distress anger signals. You're just sending out, avoidance, like stay away, back off signals to people. It also, blinds us in the sense that we can't think straight, right? We can't make rational decisions anymore. We're just like acting often just out of instinct, right? You punch somebody in the nose without stopping to think that, you really shouldn't punch a policeman in the nose, whatever it is. And so, all of these negative emotions, whether it's anger or anger-like emotions, it could be jealousy, it could be resentment, it could be anything, envy, all of these negative emotions and their resultant actions, right, help, those are the factors, that will create our future, right, because of the way karma works. So that's why we have to really make an effort to identify the causes of negative emotions, and not just identifying the causes, but being able to make a concerted effort to uproot these emotions and instead to turn towards virtue, right? So turning away from harming ourselves and others, and instead cultivating the positive emotions that bring us all together. All right. And so what's the best way to put an end to anger? Bree?
And like an antidote?
Yeah.
Forgiveness, perhaps, or, well, first I would say to meditate on it, on the causes,
Okay.
conditions, and increase
Making
your
sure you understand.
understanding about it, and then apply an antidote that doesn't harm anybody,
Mhm.
and purification.
Right. Okay.
And vow to not do that.
The resolution that you're not going to do it
Resolution
again.
Not do it again.
Excellent. Okay. Anything else? Guys online in the room?
For me, I found it most useful to find the fear that generates it, because it was always generated by
Okay.
and address that fear yourself.
Right.
I found
Okay.
that the most useful, yeah.
Identifying the underlying cause for the fear, which gives rise to anger. So let's say you're in the moment, right? Somebody's in your face, they're bugging you. What do? You practice, what's the traditional? Patience. Yes. Excellent. Patience. Okay. Easier said than done. But over and over again, right? We learn to refrain from responding. We learn to practice patience by taking the time to understand, the underlying causes for the fear that might be resulting in, an angry response, right? So you give yourself the time, maybe the luxury of being patient. Right? Take a break, get up, leave the situation for a minute. Maybe that's your chance to regain your composure and settle your mind by saying to yourself, through that the resolution, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to practice patience. Okay.
Is it best to be observing oneself in the state, like right in the moment, or sometimes, like for anger, if you're really worked up and like you just need to kind of work it off, then you might I might go for a walk or something. But the idea is still that I should be like observing what's going on, as close to like present in that as I can, right?
Right. So even if you realize that the best thing to do is to put distance between you and the trigger, right, the cause of your anger, then well, that takes mindfulness in and of itself, right? Being able to reach that decision, that takes a lot of mindfulness and self-control, discipline, right? Self-regulation. And then as you take that break, as you move away, then yes, I think that's a perfect opportunity. That's where the learning comes in, right? To be able to think that through and say, let's take a closer look at that situation. David?
I often attempt, and that's the key word, I try to practice compassion for myself in those moments, as well as for the situation or the person, usually, who is, in my mind, doing something that is creating the anger. This happens often on the road, driving, where something is happening, and I will have to remind myself that it's not about me, the person who's maybe 2 feet from my back bumper doing 60 miles an hour. I'll have to say, it's not about me. He or she is not doing that to me. And then to have some compassion for what might be happening in that person's life that makes that kind of behavior possible. So it's the compassion for myself, and as well as the compassion for the other person.
Yes.
Is that really anger or just annoyance? Annoyance is.
I also think, I may speak.
We were
I
having a
also
little
think
discussion
that
about annoyance versus anger.
Coming in the door is cold. Same as somebody.
what
Okay.
Anger is like different level.
Okay.
You get angry once in a year. What's the annoyance is. Some people have a much finer trigger than that, and I used to be angry all day, every day.
We're having a discussion in the room about
it. Like, it would be a dream for me, and I mean anger. Like, I know you.
It's a little hard to hear them.
Yeah, the discussion is from about the difference between annoyance and anger, and sort of like the sliding scale between low levels of what's an annoyance and versus what's an anger. And everybody, I think the point is that everybody has different levels, different sensitivities to. We fall in different levels of that scale.
also some self-restraint too. Sometimes we're angry, but we're in a situation that we can't get out. You can't just get up. So you have to practice self-restraint to actually develop your patience in a way to learn from that lesson, because every action has a reaction, and there are consequences to your actions as well. So self-restraint by practicing, stay in the moment, keep yourself together, is also an act of developing patience in a way, I believe.
Yeah, and as David said earlier, then being able to also, frame the situation in terms of an opportunity to be compassionate, right, for yourself, as well as for the person who is perceived as causing you to feel anger. Trying to put yourself in that person's position so that you can think, understand why they are being so annoying.
Very, very true. Very true. I like the traffic.
Yeah, that's a good example.
I sure can relate to that 60 miles an hour. Tried to cut me off on the highway, and I have to really practice restraint and patience, kindness.
So true. So true. Okay.
I think Matt Houghton has a very interesting he always repeats the same thing, is that once you realize this anger is separate, I mean, this takes a while, but separate from yourself.
Right.
Not yourself, like I'm not angry, but
right.
Once you've made that kind of shift, then you treat it like a crying baby. Like that anger is the thing you need to show the compassion for. In other words, it's not you, it's something in you. It's being annoying, it's causing strife and being loud, and it wants attention, but positive attention. You can't give it the negative attention. Slap the baby, get it to stop crying, and it never works. Right? So you have to have this new tact where, like, you're in me. I don't necessarily want you in me, but I can quiet you, I can soothe you. And so, like, a lot of his meditations and his followers' meditations are very pointed in the, like, it's a being, it's a living being, it's just being, it just needs you to cradle it. Like he says this often. Cradle your anger, quiet it, soothe it, sing to it, like it's just a crying baby, which is interesting. It took me a long time to kind of even be able to participate in that kind of a meditation, but I found it very useful, and among many other different techniques, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. Let me just follow up on that because I think I wasn't clear. So when we talk about uprooting the causes of suffering, ignorance, attachment, and anger, so that gets to that point that those are not inherently part of us, right? If they were just like so ingrained in us that we couldn't, then it would be impossible to get rid of them, right? So that's, I'm glad you brought that up.
That was big for me because I honestly thought, I bought into that I am an angry person thing. Like,
Yeah.
I just thought that was the way I was made.
Right.
Because I had no perspective on it. And that first glimpse of perspective was like really like cracking open the door, like, wow, I can put some space between this emotion and everything else in my life. That was brand new.
Yeah. That ability to be able to be free from the negative emotions means that they're not like intrinsically part of us. Yeah. I'm sorry, Doc.
I want to say thank you because I thought that was a very wonderful sharing. I mean, I never thought of it that way either, but
that's why I can't stop reading, because like every teacher has like these golden nuggets that I've never tried, and that some of them work. 1 out of 10 of them is absolutely overwhelming gold. So thank you.
So, so we have an innate, I think this goes along, I don't know if this is much of a segue, but we have an innate strong sense of self, right? That's closely tied to the idea of mine, right? That's what we were talking about, the 8 worldly dharmas, right? And that's closely tied to this idea of my house, my wealth, my sleep, etc., right? And so that idea of mine comes from that strong sense of self, right? Me, myself, mine. Me, myself, I, and mine. So once that sense of mine is generated, right, it's in a relationship that we have between, just like sitting here, right? If you're looking at different objects around the room, you don't feel particularly close to, you don't really care what happens to something that's not yours, right? You're looking around the room and you see like a random chair, right? If you don't think of it as my chair, then if that chair, gets destroyed for some reason, you'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. But once you start thinking like, oh no, it's my chair, it's my cup, right? It's my mala, right? If you take it away from me, if you mess with it, right? If you spit on it or, do something mean to it, then that's an extension of me, right? It's like you're hurting me, right? So the point then really that I'm trying to make, because I think we all know that, it's pretty obvious, but it's good to be aware of it. So all of this self-cherishing, this me, myself, and I and mine, what kind of a mind is that, right? I mean, we wouldn't be here if that was a peaceful, happy place to be, right? We wouldn't have to come to Dharma class, because we all know that that's not a peaceful, happy state of mind. Right? We all know that fighting with these negative emotions is not easy. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says in his book, How to Practice Dharma, we're in pain, but it's different from the pain of sickness. It's the pain of attachment. This is hard to see or control because strong attachment is mixed with our experience of the object. It obscures us from seeing the object's real nature and what is happening in our mind. Wrapped as we are in desire for the object, we're unable to see all that the worry, aggression, unhappiness, and fear we have in this life. They all come from that desire, which is excessively concerned with the happiness of this life. Okay. So the second, well, actually I read it out of order, but the first of the 4 seals is that all compounded things are impermanent, right? So all compounded things are impermanent. So here we've been talking about, attachment and how attachment is actually like a poisoned state of mind, so to speak, right? And that's closely related to the fact that all things are impermanent, right? So if you're attached to something that is inherently changing from moment to moment, then of course, we're going to be disappointed. So we're taught to believe that having wealth, fame, reputation, etc., that's what happiness is all about. But that's a very, limited short-term way of thinking, because everything is impermanent, right? All of these things are just like the proverbial, sandcastle on the beach, right? So by accepting this fact at a very profound level, recognizing that the nature of compounded things is impermanence, then we're able to find freedom by letting go. So we'll talk about impermanence more in particularly in this next class. But anyway, so what do we do, with all of these emotions? And we've talked about this a little bit already. But in order to free ourselves, from suffering, we need to cultivate wisdom and to transform the negative emotions. And our main tool for doing this then is meditation, right? Working with the mind, mindfulness, meditation. And what's tricky is that on the one hand, we're using our own minds, which we've just determined are, polluted by these negative emotions, right? They're obscured. So we have to use, sort of like a dirty tool, so to speak, to investigate and to cure our own unhealthy minds. Right? It's a little tricky there. And so, it's like walking, a fine line. And so it takes skill and guidance from teachers who have successfully walked the path. Just as you were pointing out, there's so many wonderful teachers out there, each one expressing, the teachings in a different way. So through meditation, we can direct our powerful habit energy of attachment, right? That impulse that we have to grasp and to hold on to things. We can transform that sort of negative energy. Instead, using it to directing it to the goal of attaining enlightenment. Right? Likewise, we can use the force of anger to burn through our laziness, to fuel our practice, so that we can continue to help others. despite whatever hardship it might cause us. We can also use regret. Regret can be a very important part, or it is a very important part of our past. As Bree was saying, it's regret that opens the door, that enables us to forgive ourselves and to be able to move forward instead of being frozen in the past. We can harness genuine, deep-seated regret with regard to our own negative behavior as part of our daily purification practice. So it's the power of regret that helps us purify our sins, our misdeeds, and protects us from committing them again. So someone who trains her mind consistently through daily meditation, investigation, and analysis, and who is inspired to practice for the benefit of all living beings, has a strong, courageous mind. Her mind is focused and very, very sharp. Just as a ballerina who practices for hundreds of hours and has perfect concentration and balance and can dance effortlessly with a mind and body that are in perfect harmony, neither too tight nor too loose. Likewise, we should develop our minds through meditation. So I think that we'll spend the next 15 minutes or so doing a meditation. I'm just so proud I managed to end at 11 o'clock. Because usually this never happens. I usually just go like way over. So anyway, one good thing. Oh. Now you have 15 minutes to do the meditation. You don't have to listen to me blabber on. Okay, so I've got 3 points. So we're going to start with so the 3 parts. Let me go through the 3 points, and then we can go through them slowly if that's helpful. The first point was going to be to identify the self-cherishing mind, right? Because we've been talking about it, but I want to just like experientially, let's call that self-cherishing mind, that me, myself, and I, the thing that, thinks that we're the center of the universe, right? Let's really feel that good old sense of I, and that's not hard, right? So we're going to think of a specific situation that helps us invoke that sense of self-cherishing, okay? And then the second point is to reflect on the disadvantages of self-cherishing, just as we've, talked about over the past hour. And then thirdly, it's going to be, we already have within us an innate sense of closeness and affection or caring for others, right? And so, let's expand on that idea by identifying in our own minds, identifying the specific, qualities that you think, you need to develop in order to be able to, truly open our hearts to others, right? What kinds of personal qualities, it doesn't have to be like a long list, but just think of something that, you really wish, you could be more whatever. And what are some of the things you might do to get to that goal, right? At least identify them, okay? So any questions? So we're gonna have 15 minutes. I'm gonna just slowly go through each of these points. Is that clear? Good, okay. All right, so just begin by sitting comfortably. You don't have to sit in any, formal meditation posture. And the first point is to identify the self-cherishing mind. Maybe you do this by thinking of a specific situation, such as when your pride was hurt or you felt threatened. Here again, we're just talking about self-cherishing, as we've talked about today. We're not talking so much about self-grasping, right? We're not going to get into that right now. So just self-cherishing, an injured sense of pride, whatever, at that level.
And if you feel like it, the next suggested topic was to reflect on the disadvantages
of self-cherishing.
And then finally, if you'd like to consider what are the qualities that we should cultivate in order to truly open
Our hearts to others.
So, for example, we talked about patience as being one of the ways to uproot anger. What are some of the other qualities that we seek to cultivate? right. So take another minute to wrap up your meditation.
Maybe generate the resolution that you'll make an effort to cultivate the qualities that you identify.
Okay. So by being mindful
And guarding ourselves with introspection from negative thoughts, emotions, and actions, and we can transform the hardships that we encounter on a day-to-day level into opportunities for virtue. So every moment of the day gives us a chance to change for the better and to eliminate our clinging and grasping, our tendency to blame others for our problems and so forth. And instead to be more generous, more grateful, and more embracing of those around us, and more accepting of whatever happens to us. And we can do this through two main practices. First, by setting our motivation from the time we wake up in the morning, right? We immediately generate bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, that strong desire to work for the benefit of all beings. And then secondly, by dedicating all the positive energy, the merit that results from our actions to benefit others, dedicating all of that merit to stop the wars, the famine, the illness, climate change, to stop both internal and external forms of harm. We dedicate all of the merit to the long lives of our spiritual teachers and to the flourishing and continuation of the Buddha's teachings. So that's the end of my blah, blah, blah. So we have a few minutes for some questions and answers. And if you're in the room, please speak really loudly, because I think the people online would be able to hear better. We don't have a microphone that we can pass around right now.
Can you repeat the fourth seal?
Oh, the one about nirvana. So the translation here is that nirvana is beyond extremes. Yeah, it's explained differently in different ways. Yeah, sometimes it just says nirvana is peace, right? But I guess the intent is the same. And we'll talk about that more in the remaining classes. Bree?
Can you talk a little bit more about how there's Buddhas around us?
So the idea is that there are many phenomena that we can't see or experience, through our sense faculties, and so I guess Buddhism, bodhisattvas fall into that category of phenomena that are existent, but that we're not directly able to perceive.
Sometimes, like, if let's say I'm in a rush, I'm starting to get annoyed, and then I can't find something, and it's going up and up and up. Oh, am I gonna finally? Da, 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 da. And then I stop. And I take breaths, and I say, and I do, I calm myself down. I take the time, and I really think about it, and poof, there it is. And in those moments, I laugh and I say thank you.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just like I feel like
Somebody tapped you on the shoulder.
Right. Somebody has tapped me on the shoulder. And I'm thankful for those moments.
Okay.
And like ever since the first time you said that, I was like, huh. Let me try to feel like be open to those moments of those aha moments of like just little day-to-day stuff it even is.
Yeah.
It's when I find them. It's fun.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a really good point. I mean, and sometimes, things do kind of turn out in a way or turn around in a way that's unexpected. And you wonder.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of us are here. That's funny.
I had one of the first task, renunciation in all the hours you're not on the cushion in modern life, how that works.
What is renunciation, or
It's
a little more?
practically how.
Yeah. So the idea is to cut through our attachment, right? And so renunciation then is not, it's an opportunity, a technique or a skill that we develop in order to minimize, to reduce our sense of attachment to the things that we think of as pleasurable, right? And so for example, what am I really attached to? Let's say I'm really attached to, I don't know, like whatever it is, or fancy cars or something, right? So in order to work with reducing that kind of attachment, then the easiest thing would be to just not look at them. Don't look at car catalogs. Don't look at them when I'm out and about driving down the highway, right? So whatever we can to minimize having our desire for that type of thing being triggered, it's just to stay away from whatever it is, right? And so renunciation, though, it's not so much the thing itself as it is the overcoming of the attachment to that habit of attachment is what it's really all about, right? And so we can a lot of people feel intimidated. I think, oh, I can't be like the Buddha and give away all my palace. I can't give away my family, all the things that his life exemplifies, right? But the moral of the story, so to speak, is that you really have to be able to cut the attachment per se. And once you can cut the attachment, right, you uproot that cause, then giving the stuff away is automatic, right? So I try to think like, do I really need another pair of shoes? Do I really need another coat? If I buy one coat, I'm not even supposed to have coats. But if I do have a coat, then I should at least make room for it by giving away, an old one, right? So you don't end up with a closet full of like 20 coats that you never really wear.
I'm curious, some people you mentioned the nice cars. Some people create those things or design cars, art, beautiful things. You can do that without attachment and it still be a good thing, right? And especially even like as I look around, these kind of beautiful things that hint toward, a deep understanding of these principles or anything like that are good. And they help people maybe have beauty or have a higher connection in their lives. So I'm just curious, what is good about
beauty in creation, and then is there something that isn't?
I guess, you know, it always comes down to that idea of motivation, right, behind anything that you're doing. So, you know, if you're creating something with the motivation of helping others versus harming others, you know, or you're creating something just to get their money, then there's no, then that would be, you know, a negative action, right? But if you're creating beauty with the idea of inspiring people, helping them better understand themselves, et cetera, then um, that would be a good thing.
Look at the
Is that
Orphan
helpful?
right now. I come here a few times I've had that privilege. I'm just stunned by the beauty of all of the art that sits in front of us, even on these rugs. If you look at some of the various designs in them, are pretty amazing. So I didn't see that there. And of course, the desk and everything else, and that can be a distraction or whatever, but it's meant for kind of bring us to a state of mind. And it's good. That way. I think you're right, both ways are possible to choose the one, both in reception and in giving.
We have our class ends at 11:30, so you're welcome to stay if you want to have some tea or something. There's a kitchen area. Not a kitchen. There's a dining area with hot water and everything. Uh-huh.
I was trying to understand what you guys were talking about, and is it that, you know, let's say if I go into a museum and I see gorgeous things, you could look at it two ways. You could say, "Ah, I wish I could afford to buy a painting that nice, or the artwork I have, oh, it's so rad. Why can someone afford this? But instead, to look at it and say, you know, look at the beautiful things that could come out in this world, or like cars as an example. You know, I don't happen to like cars, but let's say you see a car and you think, wow, that's a gorgeous creation that somebody made.
Yeah.
And I'll say to myself, thank God I don't want to buy that car. I see it and think about it, and then, but not get attached, like not go home and say, I'm getting a new car. You know,
Right.
Look at it as just like a beautiful thing and not a thing that you have to have.
Yeah.
And then it's so relaxing. That it's much more relaxing.
Right. Or you can say, you know, oh, it's wonderful that that person has the good karma to be able to afford that cool car, right? You know, like, nice. Okay, but you kind of let it go with that.
And maybe it's a person that can afford that car, but also can maybe afford to help another person, you know, like not to, the other reverse is that, is say you see somebody driving a Ferrari and you just say, this is pathetic, you know, that's so
Go to that negative.
showy, and you know, who knows, maybe that person just, because none of us are perfect, you know, maybe that person is just a good person. You
Right,
know?
but you don't know how many millions they donated to reverse climate change.
It could be a really self-centered person. It could be a nice, you know, like not to fault somebody for having that thing, but it's so free to not want it or feel like that would help you, you know, having it. I don't know, is that sort of what you guys are talking about? Is that what you meant?
Well, it sort of sounds like it's bringing up, you know, it's like a Rorschach test. Something exists and you bring your perception to it. I happen to believe that Ferraris are beautiful things and somebody had to make them. And I think that inspiration could be holy.
To be holy? Is that your last word?
Absolutely.
The last one was holy.
Well, certainly like when you start thinking about the emptiness, that impermanence of all things, and then you think about the things that we're perceiving as being temporary and very possibly beautiful to you, to any person, it's almost like Ferraris and clouds. Like the same person can see the same beauty in a Ferrari as a person can see in a cloud if you can realize that they're both the same thing. They're just atoms come together and fall apart, and you get to catch it at a certain moment. And you know that it's prickly. Buddhism is really prickly because you do wind up questioning a lot of your daily, every day I think this and do this, and then you think about it from a Buddhist standpoint, and you're like, there's just so much more in every in every everyday action and thought.
Mm.
And like we could go on about Ferraris and
I think Ferraris are ugly. I don't like Ferraris.
right, but maybe we both right. That's the thing. It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
You're looking at the wrong Ferraris.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder,
Right,
right?
it's just light refracting, and we can all see it for what it is. The key again is not to feel like, oh, I don't want to lose my Ferrari. Oh, I wish I had that Ferrari. Oh, that guy's better than me because he has, or that person's worse than me. All of that stuff is the stuff I think we're trying to focus on, and the fact that it's red or that it has wheels or that black rubber, like that's just the universe being a thing for a second, and then but we get so like, I want that. I hate that. That person's in a jerk. Blah blah blah. That's the needless.
That's all that spinning. That's the
bad
projection.
part of it, and like, I guess what I was trying to say is that appreciation of something, of a person, of a beautiful day, whatever it is a relaxing thing.
Yes.
But putting too much on it, like, oh, it's raining today, you know, it just, just to try to just be appreciative without going beyond. I think,
I agree, huh?
okay, so I get it now.
Great, good points. Anything else?
You said the next session is on impermanence, but just in regard to something someone was saying before, would you say generally that like just contemplating impermanence is the most surefire way to like find disenchantment with attachment? Like, because it's funny with the examples of the cars, like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a car designer.
There you go.
And I made an Enzo Ferrari out of Legos. That I brought that to show and tell and stuff, you know. So I had like a lot of attachment, right, to like so there's like different things you're attached to then, right? Like you're attached to the form, you're attached to the idea of it, like what the experience of actually seeing it. And one time I was at this fancy country club and I actually saw Enzo Ferrari in person. And so that was like a crazy experience. I'm looking at the engine is you can see through the glass, and like in my head I can like hear what the V12 sounds like and everything, right?
The whole experience.
But these are all
package.
Yeah, these are all like fabrications. And so like I was listening to a talk on I'm not going to say it right, Dzogchen. And it's the line that like really resonated with me was that the root of samsara and nirvana or the cause of samsara and nirvana are both in the mind. And so like that form, that all those ideas of like, you know, the real like experiential part, that's where, you know, I find it's easy to get enchanted with like with all those like the experience and but the nice thing about the experience is like those are very, you know, those are quite fleeting.
Right.
So I'm kind of rambling by now, but
well, if somebody scratches your Ferrari with a car key as they walk by.
Right.
Okay, so this next few sessions, session 2, next week. What does it mean to be Buddhist? What is the Buddhist approach to finding freedom from suffering? Sounds pretty good, right? Session 3 is, how can we lead a meaningful life in the face of constant change and uncertainty? That sounds like impermanence. Session 4 is, how can we find true joy by living for others instead of only ourselves. Okay, so we're about out of time. It's 11:33 and I don't want to hold everybody up. So I'm going to end the class now. So thank you to everybody for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Ani.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I hit the pause, stop recording.